Hamilton Tiger Cats fans,
You're not done here, Ticats.
we have the Ticats info you need on their road to Regina. Here on the Ticats Audio Network. From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Tiger Cats Game Day with Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Tiger Cats Game Day on the Ticats Audio Network. My name is Courtney Stephen, and on this playoff edition, East Semifinals, I am joined by my partner, Luke Tasker. And Luke, today it's what they've all been waiting for. When the team started the season, how we know that they did, and how they finished so strong. The record 8-10. Every win was absolutely earned, but right now, quite literally, everybody is back to 0 wins, 0 losses. It's a new season. What is the mindset of a pro football player who just went through 18 games and now they are in the knockout rounds? What is the vibe today in the locker room in Montreal?
Man, it is just the absolute most fun time of a football player's life. To enter the playoffs, to have earned that, and now be able to go to Montreal, a wonderful city, in a tough place to win football games, but just an incredible football experience, and to be able to go there. This is the best. It is the best, man. Like, I'm so just, I remember being told by a retired football player when I was in college, a teammate of my dad's, who said, I never miss playing except for when the playoffs start. And when the playoffs start, then I really wish that I was, back on a team and part of that. And that's true, man. This is the best. And it's exciting. You've earned a spot here. There's 3 teams whose seasons are done, and you're not one of them. And you get a chance to go win the Grey Cup. And just almost a vibrating energy of excitement on the morning of a playoff game when you're getting ready to go to that locker room.
On game days, when you're playing away, it's definitely different than playing at home. Different advantages, different experience. This one is a 1 p.m. kickoff at Percival Molson, 9-9 in the regular season. The Montreal Alouettes, they took the season series against the Ticats 2-1, but the games were close. They were exciting. All of them settled by 1 score or less. When you're going into a game like this, it's a big game. Do you have routines that you would have at home, or different routines that you would have on the road, specifically in Montreal?
Yeah, I loved having a routine that was specific to the cities, right? Because it's part of our CFL experience to go to each of these places, and there's only 9 teams, so you can kind of get used to each of the away cities. In Montreal, now here's the thing. Let me speak just from my Montreal experiences in general, but then we also have to talk, Courtney, of course, about the 1 p.m. start, because that changes everything. But for Montreal, you got to go on a walk. We always stayed right downtown. The city's beautiful. You can walk through the main street, and that big cathedral that was right next to our hotel all the time. It's just a beautiful city to take a walk around, and a great time of year. The unfortunate thing for that tradition, or for that game day ritual, is the 1 p.m. start. And I kind of do say unfortunate on purpose. 1 p.m. is tough for me. You get up and you just have to, you're going right away. You can't exactly, slow yourself into the day for a 1 p.m. start. You're going to get to the stadium at whatever, 10 a.m. at the latest, right? And start prepping for your role. So you got to get up and eat and get going for 1 p.m. In fact, my favorite kickoff time, Courtney, was a 4 p.m. game. You still get to see your family or hang out with the teammates afterwards. The game's ending at 7 p.m. But as opposed to the 1 p.m. start, you don't have to get up and just sprint out of your hotel room. So I was a big fan of the 4 p.m.s, and you don't get very many in a season. But yeah, for this 1 p.m. game, you got to get up and take a shower and start getting warmed up there pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was not a fan of the 1 p.m.s, but as a football fan, you got to love it when you don't have to wait all day to get the front end of that doubleheader.
Oh, yeah.
So the Ticats fans, you have won the playoff lottery. You get a chance to be first to watch your favorite team play, and they will play against the Montreal Alouettes, who this year they put on a great show. And before we talk about the players and the lineups, what we always do, I think it's important that we talk about the man who's at the front of the room, Coach Orlando Steinauer. He's coached 50 games now as a head coach, 31-19, and this season specifically, there's been a ton of ups and downs. They've had rough patches, they've had great streaks, and they started the year in such a way where they needed that leadership to galvanize them and bring them together. They say that straight roads don't make skilled drivers, and right now Orlando Steinauer's got to be about as skilled a driver as anybody in the CFL. What can you say? How can you rate his leadership or the way that he's guided this team through the different challenges they face, whether it was quarterback injuries, whether it was an O-line that was still finding its identity, whether it was, the kicking game and being in close games and not being able to finish? How do you rate his ability to galvanize this team, bring them together, and get them to the point where they finish the year about as hot as anybody?
Yeah, it is a testament to his coaching ability and to his coaching style. And I don't know about you, Courtney, in your thoughts on this, but it seems to me I've heard more. It's not just Coach O who has the idea of really identifying controllable versus uncontrollable factors like that. He didn't invent that, of course, but he really, he does talk about that quite a bit. I just think that he doesn't let those words just turn into a cliche for himself. I think he actually takes it very seriously. And the reason I say that is because he doesn't let himself get fazed by things that are outside of his control. He has his players identify what their controllable factors are, handle those things very well, and be a net positive for the team. I just think it's, he boils it down to the simple, but then takes those simple things very seriously. And I also think his experience as a player. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame football player, and that's never lost on his locker room. He relates in that way. He coaches in that way. He understands practices and games from the players' perspectives. And he's just excellent at forming a culture where guys respect and trust him, because I would imagine that's the way he was as a player, and he takes it into his coaching style. And I just found it to be, as a player in his locker room, I found it to be, you felt like you were understood, as in your hardships as a player, whether it was injuries or struggles, on the field or whatever. You felt like Coach O understood those things. He was really, empathetic in that way, and he just has a great ability to energize a locker room. There's something about the way that he handled the struggles of the 2022 season. He did that expertly. Like you said, it was not a straight road for them. They had to navigate a lot of different things, and to end up 5-1 in their last sixth of the season, that's a testament to what we're talking about with Coach O, and his ability to help his team find themselves.
Right, and that schedule was not a gimme by any stretch. Mm-mm. But one thing that we did know at the end of the year was how important what his philosophy is, the big guys up front, offense and defense, how much they make an impact on the rest of the game. I think we saw the quarterback play improve. That trickled down. We saw the running game come into its own. But let's talk about that offensive line, because today they've got a pretty impressive offensive line, 7 offensive linemen dressing. You've got the return of Chris Van Zyl in a 6th-man role. He's there as an insurance policy if they need him. He maybe will be on, the field goal team and whatnot. But just to have him there, if somebody were to go down for whatever reason, you have that veteran of veterans to be able to step in and plug the gaps. And I think experience is the name of the game for this offensive line. Between David Beard, Colin Kelly, and Brandon Revenberg, the three of them combined for 20 years experience, 298 games. For the offensive line, which is the anchor of that offense, how much does experience alone, I'm not even talking about anything else, chemistry, whatever, because they obviously have that as well, but just having experience, how valuable is that at this time of the year?
It's huge, man, and I just can't speak highly enough about the impact that David Beard had when he showed up in the Ticats. Well into this season. I mean, he did not get training camp. He didn't get the summer months of football. He came in and started making a difference right away. Of course, Brandon Revenberg, is sort of the anchor of that unit, and it's amazing how healthy he's been able to stay throughout his career. And he just continues to make an impact. But that group has really come around, because that in the first game of this season, they let up 8 sacks for that same offensive line unit. I mean, 8 sacks in that game, and it was looking like, wow, they've got some substantial issues that they've got to figure out. And sure enough, as the seasons went on, they have really flipped that around. I mean, they've been unbelievable protecting the quarterback in the last sixth of the season. And then West Hill's presence in the increase of the run game is very much so a part of their effort as well. And so, I mean, the Ticats making the playoffs, in my mind, I think about the defense. Their defense has been spectacular at times. I mean, unbelievably, just timely with big plays. Sure, tackling. The quarterback rush has been great. And then from there, I think about the offensive line. That's the nature of this team, and what they've become is a great offensive line and a great defense. And as this offense has struggled with injuries and mix-ups and mistakes and turnovers, they've had a chance to recover from those things because of their offensive line and their defense in the second half of the season. And you never know if we see some really good Ticat quarterback play, and we might see multiple quarterbacks in this playoff stretch. If we see that, the Ticats could arguably be the best team in the playoffs.
Absolutely. And you spoke about West Hills. Before we get to the quarterbacks, which is definitely something I want to talk to you about, West Hills definitely, undoubtedly, clearly made a difference when he stepped into the game with his run style. It was a change of pace. It was something that was hard for other teams to be prepared for, because the way that he totes the rock is just... It's different. It's not the style of what the Ticats offense had been bringing for a long time. So you might not have had that expectation when he stepped into the game, but he made a difference, finishing the year with over 380 yards on just under 70 carries. But I think there's been another X factor that we've talked about and we've recognized, but huge impact, which can't be overstated. Sean Thomas Erlington had a career year, both receiving. He had 216 yards, which is a career high for him, but rushing the ball, 371 yards. As far as running backs with 50-plus carries in the CFL, he leads in yards per carry with 7 yards per carry on the year. He only has 1 touchdown, but he has 5 rushes of over 20 yards. This is a guy that when you spell the starting running back and you bring in an explosive runner like that, who is, I think his style is agile, deceptive, with a little bit of burst. And it's tough to tackle him. He's 217 pounds. I did not realize, I played with Earls, but he is seriously a lightning bolt that is tough to bring down. He's an extreme change of pace from West Hill's punishing run style. I think that Sean Thomas Erlington brings a lot to this offense in the little bit of carries that he gets, especially when he gets going. And if he's got his hands with him that day in the pass game, the screen game, he can also be very dangerous. How much does it confuse, or what kind of trouble does it give to an opposing defense when you can have Wes Hills hit you in the mouth for, 3-4 quarters, but then when he gets tired, which he really doesn't get tired, they bring in a guy like Sean Thomas Erlington, who is a completely different player with a very impressive skill set of his own.
And the thing about Sean Thomas Erlington also is that he's been the added in to make the 1-2 punch with multiple other running backs throughout his career. I mean, he's always the guy. He fills in. He's done it for years. I mean, I love watching him come into a game, and all of a sudden we haven't said his name the whole night in the broadcast, and then all of a sudden he comes in the game and he doesn't just get the ball once and you say, oh, there's Sean Thomas Erlington for a nice 5-yard gain. He pops off a 22-yard gain. Like, that's the first thing he does in the game, and it might be the third quarter. It's amazing to watch him make an impact the way that he does, and he is exciting too. Like you never know. One of the things that I characterize about his style is when you think he's going to get tackled, he gets 3 more yards. I don't know how he does it. It is surprising that he's 217 pounds, because he seems like our short teammate in our minds, but he's not. He's a strong, athletic runner, and you think he's going to get tackled. No, it's 3 more, and that's amazing that he's got the most yards per rush of the qualified runners in the league this year, and it makes sense, man. He makes a difference in every game, and he can do it however Tommy Condell asks him to do it. It's really impressive.
Hey, okay, over or under 1 Sean Thomas Erlington hurdle in this Montreal game? He's going back to where he cut his teeth with the Carabin. I mean, tell me.
Yeah, no, and I remember Sean Thomas Erlington in Montreal games. Like, he gets a little fiery, doesn't he? Like, he gets a little extra fiery juice. And I would not be surprised if we see him hurdle something. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a great catch or have some moment in the game where he stands out. He's the playing football in Montreal makes his blood pressure rise a little bit.
I love it. Yeah, so talking about the quarterbacks, this is going to be a great battle. It's almost 2v1, where you've got Trevor Harris, who, when you look at the stats, he is the best playoff quarterback in the CFL. Statistically speaking, averages the most yards per game in the playoffs in the CFL all time. Okay, 385 yards per game. He's played 5 games, started 5 games. Each one of them he's passed for over 300 yards. This year in the season, he only had 3 300-yard games, but when they get to the playoffs, it's almost as if, we had our regular season playbook. Now, Trevor, we're going to ask you to put a little bit more on your plate and bring this thing home for us. He tends to take responsibility in those games that are closer, that mean more. He's going to keep the ball in his hands. But that doesn't mean that he's a gunslinger and he's stretching the field every play. He's very responsible, passes for about 71% completion percentage this season. A guy who finds a check down, who's not afraid to just dink and dunk all the way down the field until he gets within striking distance. And then he's going to Eugene Lewis, especially with Reggie White Jr. being ruled out for this game. There's one primary weapon in his receiving core. He's found him for 1,300 yards this year, Eugene Lewis. A career year for Eugene Lewis. But as a quarterback battle here, what makes Trevor Harris so dangerous in the CFL? A guy who's won championships and a guy who's been successful in multiple places. What makes him dangerous as a quarterback?
I have always thought of Trevor Harris that he'll be as patient as you could possibly imagine. The game will just progress and progress, and he's not making mistakes, but also not throwing touchdown passes. But he's, like you said, he's checking down and Oscar route and curl route behind the will linebacker, and just like, okay, just your sort of your standard move the chains type of offense. And then all of a sudden, he's been patient for 3 quarters, and then they'll put a drive together where they start pushing the ball down the field, and you don't know where it came from. He's not trying to force things in the first half of a game where he risks making a mistake. He's just patient, man. It's a great mark of a quarterback who's going to win playoff games is, the ability to control the game in the sense that you're just taking what comes from it, and not making a costly mistake, You're just operating your offense until the time comes, and inevitably it has for him, where you see him late in games start to put together 80-yard drives to score touchdowns in the fourth quarter. That's one thing that's what's a thought on my mind, Courtney, that the Ticats, the fourth quarters were such a problem early in the year, and they have improved on that. In the playoffs, you got to win that fourth quarter. When everything's on the line, any opponent, whether they're winning or losing, that fourth quarter, is gonna be a battle on its own, a game inside of a game. I think the Ticats have got to continue that streak of changing that stat that they struggled with and really dominate this fourth quarter, and not let Trevor Harris do what he's done so many times and put together those long drives.
Yeah, and Dane Evans and Matt Schultz will combine at some point in time. I do expect to see both of them because that wouldn't be anything new. Matt Schultz is a guy who I've gained a lot of confidence in. He also has Montreal ties. He played there for most of his career. And the same way that Chris Van Zyl gives you a little bit of assurance if anything were to happen, somebody who's willing and able, who's done it before, can step in and deliver. I feel the same way about Matt Schultz. Matt Schultz he's a pro. And when he's been called on this year, he did his thing. There was times when I felt like he gave a lift to the receiving core, and it was almost, like a fresh set of eyes that allowed some other guys to get involved and get going. But Dane Evans, when Dane is healthy and he's at his best, he is dangerous. He is mobile. He can throw the ball from in the pocket. He can throw it on the run. He can make the throws across the field, down the field. I think at times this year, I've wondered if Dane was playing injured, because the deep ball that he is really, I think, known for throwing, there was times in the year when he was having trouble with it, and then there was times in the year where it was clicking and it was automatic and it looked like a laser beam, and that's when he is very, very dangerous. When he could put the ball in the air 40, 45 yards, because he's got weapons that have speed. In order to take advantage of speed, it takes timing and it takes arm strength. If Dane looks fully healthy in this one, which I don't know if anybody's truly fully healthy at this point in the year, but if his arm strength is there in this one, Montreal is going to be in for a long day. Now, on the contrary, if Dane isn't feeling 100%, and if the magic of modern medicine isn't able to help him get there mentally, then I do think you see a little bit more of that 1-2 punch with him and Matt Schultz, just to add some deception, add some smoke and mirrors, so that the Montreal defense is on their heels a little bit more. How do you include two quarterbacks into a game plan in a playoff as opposed to, first few weeks of the regular season? How do you think Tommy is approaching this one from an offensive strategy standpoint?
Well, early in the season, you maybe allow yourself a little bit of breathing room to, quote, try some things out. Not really. You got to win football games. There's not, after camp and preseason ends, you can't do it so much, but you want to see both guys. It's the playoffs, man. There's no testing or trying. Whichever quarterback, due to health probably, whichever quarterback on a given drive or as the game progresses, whichever one gives them the best chance of winning or scoring on that drive, they're going to have to do that. There's no more protecting or saving, or you can't have hindsight bias here, right? You've got to put the guy in that gives you the best chance to score on any given drive. I think it seems like a really, really hard thing for me as an offensive coordinator. I don't know how you operate with two. In my mind, I'm you decide in the week of practice and make it and go for it. And that's not the way that this team has functioned. I mean, they actually use both in games, and I was really impressed in the home Tim Hortons Field Ottawa game. Matt Schultz came in, Dane slid and seemingly did something with his throwing hand, right? Matt Schultz came in, and I always that's a tough thing for a quarterback. You were just on the sidelines with a baseball hat on, right? With the headsets on, and then the very next play, something happened, and you're in there, and there's these D lines in CFL coming to tackle you. You've got to read this defense. It's all of a sudden you got to wake up like that. Matt Schultz came in and just comfortable in the pocket and throws a strike down the field. He threw a comeback on the Ticat sidelines in that game, and I just thought, man, it's really interesting how the Ticats can use and how both of these guys can be productive. And Dane was driving the ball down the field prior to hurting his hand. So, I don't know. It's just like it's part of Dane Evans' career, like history. Like it's like he's always sharing time and playing well while doing it. So I don't know. I think that we're going to see both guys, and it seems to me like there's a decent bit of trust there.
Well, we just would hope to see if and when they do have some of those plays. We've seen plays where both quarterbacks were on the field at the same time. Whatever they do, my solemn wish would just be do the things that get the ball down the field and continue to allow the players to make the plays. I think the only time when you get in trouble is when okay, let me put it like this. I heard a coach tell me once, okay, is when I think it was in college or maybe it was in pro, maybe it was Jeff Reinbold. He said football is easy and us coaches, we make it hard, right? By complicating it and drawing up all kinds of crazy lines on the whiteboard or in the playbook and whatnot. I think you've got guys on this Hamilton offense. You've got Tim Whites, you've got Stephen Dunbar Jr.'s, you've got Wes Hills, you got Sean Thomas Erlington. Just get the ball to those guys without having to create the newest, craziest, amazing scheme. And I think that's the recipe to win. And I'm not saying they don't do that. I'm saying they do that, and let's get all of those plays. Like you're saying, it's the playoffs. Call your best plays. Of course, there's going to be wrinkles that they've been setting up or they self-scout. And, maybe every time they line up in a certain formation, they've had a certain handful of plays, maybe 5 plays out of this one personnel grouping in this zone of the field. And, you work off of that and you maybe throw a wrinkle in there that's going to get you that first down when you really, truly need it on 3rd and 5. But, other than that, I would say don't get too cute because it's tough to win a football game when everything is equal. If you put yourself behind the 8 ball, then it gets really interesting. And speaking about putting yourselves behind the 8 ball, there's a guy who's been doing that for his whole career, Micah Johnson. He's been putting people under pressure for his whole career, and I think his second half of the season has also been quite impressive.
Yeah.
He finished the year with 7 sacks. Julian Hauser finished the year with 7 sacks. Malik Carney finished the year with a handful of sacks as well. These are guys who I think are going to have a humongous role to play in this game. The defensive line for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Now, in the season series, Montreal and Hamilton. Montreal gave up 7 sacks combined. Hamilton gave up just 2. The big difference is when Hamilton won, they got to the quarterback 5 times in that game. So looking at all of the stats and breaking down all of the numbers, this was the biggest one that stood out to me. Was Hamilton was able to run the ball really well in the game that they won, and they were able to get to the quarterback. If they are able to win this game, I think it's going to be one that comes through the offensive line and the defensive line, specifically guys like All-Star Micah Johnson and East All-Star Julian Hauser. These guys here, between Ted, Micah, and Julian, they combined for 368 games of experience. That is a lot of football. That is a ton of football. And that's not even including the other guys on that defensive line who rotate in, as you know they do. So that defensive line, what kind of things have they done this year that have allowed them to be successful? Is it exotic stuff? Is it coverage behind them? Is it just that Micah is just way too big? He looks like he came out of a laboratory. The man is massive. What is it that allows them to be successful and affect the game?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that unit, kind of like the offensive line, they've had kind of the story of 2 seasons too. I mean, they weren't getting to the quarterback all that much in the first half of the season. And as the year progressed, all of a sudden they were really impacting the games in this last sixth year. And you're right, Micah Johnson, his second half was really, really impressive, and an East All-Star. And I think there's some just cohesiveness that they've found there, and they have an amazing combination of youth and experience, which I just find interesting in any position group. You can't really mention defensive line production, though, and you touched on this in your question, without talking about the linebacking core in the secondary. The Ticats secondary, I think, is the downright outmost best in the CFL. I think they are just an excellent core group of guys, and they've got all their guys now. It's the lineup that you expected. Injuries have come and gone throughout the season, but this is the group of guys that you wanted in there. And it's Tunde Adeleke in the middle back there that I'm just so impressed with every game, and his ability to take on a lot of the playmaking responsibility in that defense. He finds himself all over the field and does an excellent job at it. And so that defensive line production is helped by that secondary that has just been able to cover down, able to break up passes, able to take out space, and just what I think is the best in the league. And that's, you could see it. I mean, in that Ottawa game, this last game, and say whatever you want about that it didn't matter or that it didn't have playoff implications, Ottawa wanted to win that game. I mean, it was the last game of their season. And that second half, just consecutive 2-and-out, 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 2-and-out. The defense just would not stay on the field. They were getting off as quickly as they possibly could, and it was unbelievable to watch.
And that secondary led the team to 16 interceptions. Now, I know 2 of those interceptions came from what Mike Daly called the best coverage defensive end in the league. Julian Hauser had 2 picks. But outside of that secondary, they were responsible for 2 touchdowns. Richard Leonard, in his outstanding game they played in Calgary, he had a pick 6. And then Jamal Rowe also had a pick 6 against Toronto earlier in the season. But that back end does a lot to keep games close. They don't really give up the big one and just allow opponents to strike from a very far distance. They limit the explosions. And for a defensive back group, they tackle extremely well. You can tell it's something that they work on, and it's something that they coach a lot. So I would be very excited to watch this battle, because a guy like Eugene Lewis, you want to see receivers who can go up and catch the ball up high. And then a guy like Jamal Rowe, who's a physical corner who plays man-to-man coverage, and he's going to get his, those are actually the most exciting, for me, a defensive back. Those are some of the most exciting battles to watch in the game. And then even in the special teams column, their biggest contributors on special teams is a defensive back. Stavros Katsantonis has 20 special teams tackles on the year. The next closest, Vashawn Joseph, he has 10. So Stavros has been making an outstanding contribution in the role that he's gotten. We know that he has playmaking ability if he is to get in some type of long distance package as well. There's confidence there, and the coaches believe in him. So this defensive back group, which is tied at the hip a little bit with that defensive line, I think they're going to do outstanding this game. It's a big pressure situation, and with a team that has a quarterback that likes to put the ball up in the air, those are the 2 groups who will be important to watch. Now, I would say one more thing as we're getting closer to the end here. Obviously, Seth Small, we know that he's been phenomenal. We've been a part of some games against Montreal where missed field goals have been very critical in the outcome of the game. I remember playing in Guelph in 2013. It was, I think it was both our CFL rookie seasons. And there was a field goal that was, for all intents and purposes, it was good, but Mother Nature had other plans, and the wind was so strong that it actually, the aim was true, but the power wasn't enough to overcome the gust of wind. And Speedy B caught that ball, that missed field goal, and took that and ran that thing all the way to the other end of the field. So, there's games that are defined by one big play here or there, and typically if you have a huge play on special teams, that can be the one play that defines a game or that people remember a game for. Lawrence Woods III undoubtedly made a great impact when he was on the field. Do you think that who is also a great special teams tackling player, I think he finished the year with about 7 tackling. But as a return game goes, does Lawrence Woods have what it takes to break this game open and really put the team on his shoulders and set them up in a position to win?
He absolutely has what it takes. Like, the opportunity, needs to come. I can't get it out of my head about with the Calgary game before Dane Evans made a last-minute drive to win the game down the field with Tim White. That drive started with a Lawrence Woods return. And prior to taking the field, Dane Evans shared with us that Lawrence Woods looked at Dane and said, "I'm going to get you guys to the center line, to the middle of the field," and then received the kickoff and did that. Returned the ball to the center line after telling Dane that he would. That is a playmaker, like somebody who just decides to make up their mind and make a difference in the game. So the answer to the question of today of the playoff game, he has what it takes to make the difference, and the opportunities have to come, the blocking, the scheme, all of that. But he'll take advantage of them when they do come, and I will not be surprised. That was Speedy B, man. Like, in the big games, he was gonna make a return happen, and Lawrence Woods has that as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see him impact the game.
Man, it's just exciting to watch. It definitely makes that ticket worth the price of admission to go and see a show like that. Chandler Worthy on the other side, he also is a great explosive player, and I'm sure that they will be accounting for him. But enough about Montreal. Luke, as we're getting to the end, tell me what kind of matchups you're going to be focused in on. There's always the battle within the battle, the game inside the game. Who are going to be the 2 players or the 2 units that you're going to be looking at? Or who is the one person who has an opportunity to make the biggest difference and swing the pendulum in favor of his team today? Who are you going to be putting the ISO cam on?
Well, I'm always going to be focused on the quarterback situation in Hamilton because it's been a good storyline all year, and so I want to see how Dane Evans comes out here and operates this game. One thing that I'm going to be really keen on during the broadcast is which offensive line is giving their quarterback time. So in a sense, offensive line versus offensive line, if you want to say that like that, as the game progresses, and to see which unit is giving up the sacks. And we talked about that Hamilton rush and their dominance in the last half of the season here. If they can make Trevor Harris's life uneasy and uncomfortable, that's going to make a difference in the game. Here's an interesting one in relation to Lawrence Woods as well. You've got Blake Hayes is coming in as the punter for the Ticats for the playoffs. Punted in the Ottawa game, and all of a sudden he's the guy now. And Damagala is gonna not suit up to take the punts for this game, and that was a decision that the coaching staff made going into this. And the kicking game in the playoffs it is never meaningless. There's going to be field goals and punts that impact the game, and returners that make a difference. And so I'll be very interested to see who's winning the battle of field position, who has the ability to flip the field in the punting game, and which returners can make an impactful, explosive return.
Okay, and I think this is an important learning opportunity for the casual fan. We know what a good field goal looks like because it goes between the uprights. But what is a great punt? Because
that's a great question.
Some people think you just boom it as far as you can, but that can actually end up haunting you. What does a great punt actually look like?
I love that, and I want to hear your answer too because of the impact that you made on all the teams that we were a part of in the kicking game. But you're so right, because the Ticats really have not had a great net punt throughout the season, and so compared to the other 8 teams in the league, but they've done really great in coverage, and so it's scarred into our minds, Courtney, because Jeff Reinbold. We all of us have the trauma of it being scarred into our brains, and Jeff Reinbold is an unbelievable special teams coordinator. I mean, really a world-class special teams coordinator. Because of hammering down the foundations of this, a punt is supposed to be directional, it's called. Like, people don't realize that. You're so right, Courtney. There is left and right punt calls, and it's supposed to be, it's drawn up like any other football play. You want to be outside of the numbers with the placement of your kick, and with good distance, but not line driving there. We've all seen those punts that it's the classic out kicking your coverage, right? And that returner catches the ball with so much space around him. That's dangerous. I can remember seeing opponents punt to us and Speedy B catching the ball all by himself, when the punt was way deep, and you're thinking on the sidelines, he's going to score a touchdown right now. He's going to score. And so that punter has an unbelievable responsibility it'll happen throughout the season when it called left punt, and all those gunners, all the punt team rushing down and netting the field to cover down that kick are going towards that left punt, but the punter mishits it and that ball gets put into the middle of the field or towards the right hash. That's chaos. That's catastrophe for a punt unit where everyone has to readjust to that punter. But you're so right with the placement. And so the Hayes and with the weather and the playoffs and the impact of the kicking game in general, this is going to be really interesting to see how the punt game affects the flow. Courtney, let me ask you, as you were running down covering punts in your career, talk to me about that moment when you're running down and you realize that punter has mishit the ball and it's going in the wrong direction or too short. What happens in that gunner's mind?
And see, this is the thing too. You only have so much awareness of all of those variables as you're fighting for your life to get off of the person whose other job is to stop you from getting down there, right? It's not just a stroll in the park. There's a guy who's married to your hip trying to get you out of your lane, get you too wide, get you to run past. So if the ball is mishit short, there's a challenge there, because the returner doesn't actually need to catch it cleanly. If he's close enough to you and you're within 5 yards, all he has to do is touch the ball, and that's an extra 15 yards automatically. So you have to take a peek to double check and make sure they punted the ball where they're supposed to punt it. You could be susceptible to a lot of fakes, reverses, across the field passes, especially in this time of the year. Coaches aren't leaving any tricks in the bag. They're pulling all of those out. So the outermost players, what they call the gunners, the guys who line up in the wide receiver spot of the punt team, they actually have to be able to see all other 23 players to make sure that they are the outermost and that they do have everything contained. And like Simone Lawrence says, if you start on the right, you stay on the right and play left shoulder football, so that the rest of your teammates, they have a more confined area to make those tackles in. But if you kick it way too far, then it's just you and all that green space. And that is an intimidating, lonely feeling when 20,000 people are waiting to see if you're going to dive to contact, or if you're going to step to contact, or if you're just going to shuffle your feet and wait for the cavalry to come. This league is built on speed. And I think if I was a general manager, aside from the quarterback and maybe, a couple key players like an offensive lineman that can really anchor my team, and, a really good corner or safety, a good middle linebacker. One of the first 5 people that I'm going to recruit to get onto my team if I'm building it from scratch is an electric returner. Every team has a great returner. And if you have 5, 10, 15 yards of space between the returner with the ball and the first cover guy, the thing that you're giving them is vision. He has a chance to look, assess, find the place where there's the least amount of other colored jerseys, and then, as they say, the cannons go off. So I think this will be interesting to watch for the football nerds. Yes, check the placement of the ball, check the distance of the ball. How close is the gunners when the returner catches it? If they're within about 10 yards, that would be great. If they're within 5, closer than 5, that's a problem.
Yeah, right.
I think that it'll be good though, because these special teams units all year have done a lot to lift their respective teams, and it is all 3 phases in the playoffs. There is no opportunity to lay an egg because that could be the one play that we described that swings the pendulum in the favor of the other team. So 1 p.m. at Percival Molson Stadium today is going to be the Hamilton Tiger Cats going into Montreal to take on the Alouettes, who have hosted 3 consecutive East semifinals, but have not been to the Grey Cup since 2010. Now, obviously, we know the Ticats, they've been to the Grey Cup 4 times in the last 10 years, but they have not won it in 21 seasons. Since 1999, the longest drought in the CFL. The road to the Grey Cup starts today. So Ticats fans, don't miss it. And if you're not going to be in Montreal, listen that ticats.ca is the best play to catch the game. Of course, yours truly, Luke Tasker and RJ Broadhead, will have the call. Bubba and Andy got you ready on the pregame. So thanks for tuning in to Ticats Audio Network. We appreciate you, and we hope you have a great game day.
It's game day and you're ready. So are we. Let us know your thoughts. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Courtney, Stephen, and Mike Daly are here every game day with their insights into today's game. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.